This is TWIS, This Week in Science, episode number 1068, recorded on Wednesday, July 22nd, 2026. Invasive Science. Hi everyone, I'm Blair, and tonight we are going to fill your head with pigs, lizards, and plant cheese. But first,
thanks to our amazing Patreon sponsors for their generous support of TWIS. You can become a part of the Patreon community at patreon.com/thisweekinscience.
Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. Tonight we will try to hold back our expectations and our preconceived notions. We will recognize the science holds no opinions. It knows numbers and probability. But the people who interpret those, they are human and they have biases. So we will try to check those at the door and revel in the beauty that is This Week in Science, coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind that can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening, what's happening, what's happening this week in science. What's happening, what's happening, what's happening this week in science.
Good science to you, everyone. Good science to you, Dana. We have a guest tonight.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
So Dana was so lovely to join us tonight because Kiki is unable to join us as our intrepid host today. So it is just me running the whole show here. You're in trouble, everybody. But this week's episode of This Week in Science, we have a great show ahead. On this show, I have a bunch of science news, but first and foremost, we have a guest. As we jump into the show, though, I want to remind you that subscribing to the TWIS podcast on your favorite podcast platform is a great way to support us. That could be YouTube or Facebook, Twitch, whatever you may have. Also, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Just find us, whatever medium you prefer. And go ahead and listen to TWIS each time a new episode is published. Share us with your friends. Just search for This Week in Science, or you can visit twis.org. But we are going to go right into it with our special interview here today. So our guest is Dana Page. She is a trained wildlife biologist working on large-scale regional land management strategies. She has a bachelor's in environmental studies from UC Santa Cruz and a master's in environmental management from University of San Francisco. Dana has over 2 decades of experience working throughout the Bay Area on a variety of projects, ranging from island restoration off the California coast in SF Bay. I want to hear more about that. Coastal grassland habitat restoration, prescribed fire and rangeland management, just to name a few. So, welcome, Dana Page.
Thank you, Blair. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm so stoked to talk about wildlife management and, of course, in particular, California. I'm a local. You're a local, right?
Yes, I'm a 5th generation Californian, actually.
There you go. Yeah. So I feel very connected. It feels very personal to me when I go out in nature in California, particularly around the Bay Area. And I feel very passionate about that. So I'm very excited to talk to you about that as well. Do you want to talk a tiny bit about how you got into this kind of field, or what sparks your joy every day?
I got into this field, being in California, great weather. Definitely my dad was a huge influence. And I grew up in a family of 4 with sisters and a brother. And so my dad was a Cub Scout leader. And me and my sisters weren't allowed in Cub Scouts back when, Cub Scouts.
Different now.
It's different now. Yeah, exactly. So I just grew up camping and being outside, and my dad taking us on hikes, and we had a large garden and we had chickens. And so I was just always exposed to birds and animals. And on my dad's side, my grandfather was a naturalist. My dad was a naturalist. So I definitely got those genetics of enjoying observing nature, and decided at one point in my young adulthood that man, you got to work your whole life. That dawned on me. And I realized that if I was going to have to work my whole life, I was going to do something that I enjoyed and that I felt passionate about. And it's, I'm a trained biologist, but then just everything that goes with working on large scale projects, doing restoration, like the political side, getting people out to enjoy nature, and just all of those as a biologist kind of work together and make what I do for my professional life as a biologist, but then also I spend a lot of time outside when I'm not at work also.
Yeah, I gotta say, as someone who has had the pleasure of going on a hike with you, it's just your joy of being outside and the amazing, vast body of knowledge that you carry with you is like so infectious and beautiful. And I'm just so excited to talk to you tonight. So, speaking of kind of like the political side of things, so a few weeks ago it was actually on our June 3rd episode, which was episode 1061, if any of you want to refer back to it, we talked about a new study that compared the impact on native plants from deer to feral pigs. And the kind of the long and short of the study, which Dana, I know you read, but the crux of it was that the plots where they looked at feral pigs being the main forager in the area, there was a wide swath of kind of different species of plants. But in the ones where there were native deer, the local plants, the native plants, their levels were way down and the invasives were way up. And it was because the deer prefer the native plants because that's what they, evolved to eat. But the feral pigs, because they're kind of non-discriminatory in what they eat, the researchers suggest that perhaps it's more complicated than just saying, hey, there's this invasive animal, it shouldn't be here. Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about without going too deep into it, but your history with feral pig management in California and kind of what you thought about this study?
Yeah. So I could go into a super deep rabbit hole, but I'll try to keep it, high level. But yeah, so pigs invaded California, United States. They're all over the Bay Area. They are a nuisance. The biggest complaints, I think, from the public is that they cause infrastructure damage. So that's a lot of complaints we get, is them tearing up lawns. Mm-hmm. It's like, they're not necessarily eating plants, they're rooting, right? And so one of their favorite plants is soap plant. And so they're going for like bulbs. So soap plants are native and they're bulbous. So I've been out in grasslands and just seen they'll go through like acres and just root up these bulbs. They're also grubbing for grubs. So all of the larvae that go into the soils, they can smell those and then they're using their tusks. And they're, gathering all those things. And that's one of their preferences. They definitely have cyclical, like we talked about a little bit, Blair, like it's very cyclical eating habits based on the seasons. Mm-hmm. And then they like to root, but they need to root when the soil's soft. So there's an uptick right now, specifically in the end of the summer months, once things dry out, because they're searching for irrigated turf because they can't get into like hard compacted ground. And then
so they're only going to the stuff that we're managing, which either we want it to look pretty and nice, or it's plants we're trying to baby, essentially.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And so then probably in the next month or so, you'll get the acorn drop of, all the oak trees across all parts of California. And then they'll go back into the hills and they'll start foraging for oak acorns. And so they love acorns. So, I mean, jamón ibérico from Spain is like a delicacy, and it's pigs that eat acorns.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I think like we really, if we're managing them and there's depredation involved, we really need to think about like, are we eating them and processing them? And maybe we should be.
Okay, well, that's one way to get rid of feral pigs. Okay, so at least in your experience, it sounds like they are not as much of a generalist as this study would suggest. Is that right?
Well, they are more of a generalist, but I think the interesting thing is that a way that a deer forages versus a way that a pig forages is like different, right?
Sure.
Deers are just herbivores eating stuff, where the pigs are actually like causing some habitat modification
I
to the
see.
actual soil, right?
But so also, I guess like if deer are just eating off of the kind of the new growth of a plant, does that mean that individual plant can survive having a deer eat off of it, but a pig is rooting? That
Yeah,
would destroy a plant, right?
yeah. So I think that's fair, but then deers have a preference, right? And I'm sure if deers, and so it gets pretty complicated because then you have to think about like the larger food web and mountain lions. And there's actually a lot of stuff happening locally in the Bay Area as the Puma Project, and people are really trying to support mountain lions in the Santa Cruz Mountains and across like the Coyote Valley, they're calling it, and then into like the Gavilan Range. And so think there's a decrease in predators of deers too. So
Right.
then, I mean, I don't have it like in my head. I don't know the fact, but I'm sure there's more deers than there maybe historically would have been. But
Right.
then in a unaltered ecosystem, you would have other ungulates. That's a great scientific word. Um, so you would have tule elk, and then you would have pronghorn sheep. And so you would
Right.
have like a variety of ungulates, but we just have deer. So I'm sure there's like, instead of how they're eating, having some variation, now it's just a deer and they're probably overpopulated.
Interesting. So it's a lot more complicated than
Yeah.
just like deer v pigs.
Yeah. But like the interesting thing to me about the article was, and everyone, like any ecologist, biologist you talk to, they're like, pigs ruin the environment,
Right.
right? They're like, pigs are causing this disturbance, and this disturbance is horrendous, and these invasives are coming in, and it's their fault, or like they get a lot of
Yeah.
bad rap. Um, but I'm starting to think, with just more qualitative observations through my time, seeing areas um, that have been grubbed by pigs. It's not necessarily that. And disturbance, if you study ecology, disturbance is necessary in any ecosystem.
Yeah.
Why are we there, not to bring up wildfire, but it's a good example, but like not having wildfire for hundreds of years
Right.
has put us in a bad place when we are having wildfires, because there's no disturbance. So you have to have a natural disturbance regime. And so I personally think, and I'll kind of save like my big hypothesis for the
Yeah.
talk, but I kind of have a hypothesis about that. So, but where I've seen a hillside where pigs have grubbed almost an acre. And I was like, man, that, everyone told me that that was bad. So I think that's bad. And
Right. Of
then,
course.
yeah, because that's like, oh my God, animals
Yeah.
just cause disturbance. But I came back the next spring, and there was more delphinium and more balsam root and more of the native plants in that disturbed soil. Because think about it, like you're planting in your garden, you want to like rototill the soil so that it's
Right.
fresh, and then there can be new seeds. So I think the real thing that's happening that we're seeing is, it's not pigs. Like pigs are doing something that is natural, but the fact that we've brought in invasive plants is the actual problem.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about this because, like, okay. So first of all, there's two things here I want to talk about. So one, this is so fun. Okay. So, so one, it almost sounds to me like the feral pigs are actually filling like an empty niche.
Mm-hmm.
So what niche is that? Is that like bear? Like
That's
what?
why. That's it. Grizzly bear.
Okay. Yeah. So that makes perfect sense to
Yeah,
me.
because they're grubbers. They're going in and getting larvae from soil. And think about
Yeah.
what like California looked like when grizzly bear roamed. Like the
Yeah.
stories you hear, and think about how much one grizzly bear is eating, and they would do that same exact disturbance. So I don't know where I heard it, or one, but like through all these forums that I go to and people talking about pigs, someone was arguing that feral pigs are filling the ecological niche of bears, and that it's like
Wow.
not as bad as everyone makes it out to be. But then it's
Okay.
really bad because we run all these invasives, so the invasives are like reseeding in the disturbed areas versus
I see.
yeah, if there's just native plants, then it'll remain native plants.
Right.
So someone
okay.
needs to study that. Grad
So
student out there listening, study that.
yeah, I love that. So, um, when is an introduced species an invasive species? Like we talk about this on the show all the time. Like I know it's just a name. It's like calling it something a weed or not. It is completely context dependent. It is a like a assignment of value or lack thereof, right? So, what is your kind of philosophy of what makes an invasive species problematic?
Um, well, there's like biologically, and then there's like economically. So
Okay.
I think that we would probably consider, like think about zebra mussels
Right.
or mussels that are causing problems in water systems and infrastructure. Like those are highly invasive, and we do a lot to prevent them because of the ecological damage that they're causing. But then you think of a plant maybe like yellow star thistle. A good example is mustard. Like, are we ever going to eradicate mustard?
Right.
And people love it. Every spring it's out. People are taking photos in it.
Yeah.
People are happy, but then through the eyes of a biologist or someone that loves science, you're like, oh my God, it's an invasive. Why do you love taking photos in that? Um, so yeah, so it's a pretty fine line, but I think at some point, specifically with invasive plants, like that's very gray of when it's invasive. Then you have the term naturalized, right? So
Okay.
some things like been there for however long, like look at eucalyptus trees,
Yes.
right? Like eucalyptus trees have been around for a really long time now. Monarch butterflies are using them at natural bridges. So like, are we going to go remove a bunch of eucalyptus trees?
Good luck.
Right? Yeah, in certain fire contexts. So yeah. Then I think for animals though, um, it's a little more cut and dry and black and white for animals because like no one likes red. Like the red foxes were brought for hunting, and then like technically, if you find a red fox, Fish and Wildlife wants you to cull it.
Well, I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, I've done like wild feral
Whoa.
cat trapping, and a lot of times I would get um, red foxes, and then you call
Yeah.
Fish and Wildlife, and they come get the fox.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it depends on your definition of ecological damage and
Sure.
like where that's going. And then so that's the thing is I think that like humans are annoyed by pigs and the damage that they're causing, like
Yeah.
you said, to their flower beds. And so, it's like invasive pigs, but how long have pigs been here? You know,
Right.
a
Yeah.
hundred.
When does an invasive species become part of a habitat? Because, like, if they crossed a land bridge or they got on a natural raft or something and went to a place that they weren't at before, but that happened before we were around to point at and say, you don't belong here.
Yeah.
Like, that's part of evolutionary history to us now.
Hmm.
And like it or not, humans are like we're in the Anthropocene, right? Like we have shaped this world.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's such a complicated like where do you focus your time and energy, I guess, when it comes to invasive species.
Yeah, and that's the hard part. And I think the reality too is people think that the easy thing to do is to depredate pigs,
Mhm.
which means, for lack of a better term, just to kill them.
Mhm.
But I tell people we could depredate and take pigs till we're blue in the face, but we're never gonna be able to eradicate them.
Mhm.
They're pretty much here to stay. Obviously, we don't want extensive numbers of them, so there might have to be some management with culling. But I think when I'm talking to people in the public, people, with houses, it's like about hardening your infrastructure so that pigs are not attracted. Right. And so the other thing that always gets me so mad is you go to a campground in California in the Bay Area and it's like, oh, well, no, I don't have to put my food away. And so there's a lot of there's public confrontations with interactions with pigs and people camping. And some pigs in some campgrounds have ripped open tents and backpacks, and then people are gone. They'll drink the Coors Lights, they'll like get into
Then you have a whole nother problem.
And so I try to advocate for, we need wildlife proof, lockers. You go anywhere in the Sierras.
Right.
Some park agencies are a lot better at it, but it's like, you don't go to the Sierras and not put your food in a bear box, because a bear could potentially kill you, harm you. But then, because it's a pig, it's like, oh, well, it's just a pig.
Right.
So I really advocate for hardening of infrastructure, specifically where there's going to be like a human to animal interaction, to prevent those from happening, because people do get bit, people do get attacked. I think there was a case where like a woman in Texas, an elderly woman, because the pigs are really bad in Texas, actually was deceased when she came into a group of pigs.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it can be bad.
Yeah, I think but you're getting to it, right? Like, we would love to think that we can just solve the problem, but it seems like we're going to have to find a way to live with the pigs. So, I think camping is a great example. We need to just make that part of the camping culture, is that you don't have food in your tent. End of story. Like, that keeps you from getting a skunk in your tent too. It's just better.
Yeah, and in general, all animals not acclimated to human food are better wildlife and healthier, right? It's not healthy for raccoons to be eating bags of marshmallows and your Hershey's chocolates when they steal your s'more stuff. So
yeah, and if pigs aren't being fed human food all the time, then they're less likely to try to seek it out. Kind of, you got to get through a couple generations, but I feel like you could get there.
Yeah.
Push them back into the wild. Okay, so like, ultimately, what's your takeaway on this story before we move on?
So ultimately, my takeaway on the story is that, like, I'm kind of happy because it kind of proves what I've been seeing qualitatively.
That's cool. Yeah.
So I'm obviously not collecting any scientific statistic data that's saying this, but my hunch has been that the disturbance that pigs are causing is not as great as people are saying that it is, and it's not causing as many problems as other people managing lands, neighbors, all these people are saying. So deers are probably worse. So I'm kind of happy about that. Deers are cute, and they're like, oh, look at
peaceful.
So, exactly. But I mean, I don't know if you know anyone that has a garden that a deer likes a plant in their garden. Like, deers will come and decimate all of your stuff as well.
No, for sure.
So so I think great study, and it should there should be more studies to follow up on what's actually other examples of what's going on there.
Yeah, I think kudos to researchers who take on kind of the question that might provide an answer that people find uncomfortable. Like, that's the first thing I thought about this, was that, ooh, this is going to make some people feel uncomfortable, like itchy, like, ooh, I don't love this data. I think that's the best thing, is when you can kind of shift public perception with, anyway. So the other thing I wanted to talk to you about was, there was this really cool story that came out. Well, I don't know if it's cool, but it was interesting, about prescribed burns. And I know that, Dana, you work in prescribed burns and have for quite some time. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a study out of Australia. So that's like the big asterisk I want to put on this, is I want to hear your opinion of this, because I'm not really sure what the expectation or the processes are in the United States and in California in general, or specifically. But in Australia, it seems like they do survey prescribed burn areas, but sometimes days after the burn. And the idea is that they're supposed to be doing a survey to figure out what was harmed by the fire. so that they can kind of assess the pro con of that prescribed burn and inform future burns. It's like, okay, so the prescribed burn is going to help keep the forest healthy or the land healthy, but and allow things to seed that need fire to seed, and all of the various benefits from a prescribed burn. But there could be fatalities in wildlife because they couldn't escape the burn. So they want to walk the burn and figure out if there were any animals that died from the burn. But because they do it sometimes not right away, this piece of research wanted to look at the difference. This is from Adelaide's University School of Biological Sciences, and they found that a lot of lizard carcasses were found hours after the fire, but after about 12 days, all of the carcasses had disappeared, most likely removed by scavengers. To that I say, duh. So, this is one of those things where there are stories. Sometimes there's a piece of research that comes out that's like, well, yeah, of course. Which, first, they got to do the research. We can say something sounds like it's probably true, but without data, you can't say for sure.
Yeah.
But they looked at 10 prescribed burns across southern Australia. It was in eucalyptus forests. It was between 2022 and 2024. They recorded 27 dead lizards from 4 species. 52% of them were discovered less than a day or just after a day after the fires were extinguished. And by the day 12, they were all gone. And so they believe that birds, foxes, cats, and invertebrates rapidly remove the carcass from the bird landscapes. And so they're basically saying 2 things. One, you got to do your surveys quickly. And 2, the impact of prescribed burns are probably greater than are being recorded. So with that, what is your experience with surveying burns afterwards?
Yeah. So, I do not, and obviously 2 completely different habitats, right? I've primarily burned in oak woodlands and grasslands because they're pretty safe to burn in grasslands. It's manageable fuel. I have done a couple burns in redwood forests, which was super cool to see. We burned at night, which was amazing.
Whoa.
But one of the reasons we do, and a lot of people do, remove the eucalyptus throughout California that's established is because it has a higher burn intensity and the way that the bark sheds. And so it's a fire hazard. So a lot of, especially now with the increase in wildfire, a lot of people are doing large eucalyptus removal projects to get stands of eucalyptus removed in strategic places. So that being said, my observation is after we've burned, and the burns I've been on have been anywhere from 10 to 15 acres, maybe up to like 700 acres, which is a big burn.
Yeah.
But then you look at someone like, federal agencies, we should be doing thousands of acres.
Mm-hmm.
So I think locally, a lot of people are trying to figure out how to increase prescribed fire because it's all the things you said, it's great ecologically, but then also for fuel reduction because of its suppression and reducing catastrophic wildfire. Everyone that I've been on, I've never seen a dead lizard.
Whoa. We have a lot of lizards too.
And I feel like we do. And but I think it could have something to do with fire intensity. Okay. But we have burned in like stands of thick oak woodlands that I've walked through. Australia has more lizards, and there's probably more animals like in burrows, but all the lizards I've seen, primarily western fence lizards and skinks, you can actually see them running away.
So isn't it true that eucalyptus, maybe you don't know. I know they're like not your specialty, but I thought eucalyptus burns really hot.
Yes.
And that there's noxious gas.
I didn't know that. I didn't know. I knew that
Let me do a quick fact check while you're talking, but I think
gas. So if
I thought the eucalyptus oils,
that would make sense. But a few times in general, and so the thing too is obviously prescribed fire, it's not there to harm wildlife, but I think you have to assume some level of take and incidentals that are going to happen because it would happen in a regular wildfire, right? A naturally caused wildfire. So generally, um, I see the animals move away. Birds will like fly out of areas. Obviously, deers. One year there was a mama pig and her like new little piglets in a thicket of one of the fields that we were burning, and they just like scattered, and she ran, and who knows what happened. But I mean, the piglets were like tiny little piglets. Some of them did get burned, so I'm sure there could have been some eventual fatalities to some of the piglets that got burned. But everything I've seen, and then the crazy thing is like, and grasslands are easier and simpler. And then once the flame front goes through, like it's crazy how many crickets you see. And so I'm like, where did the crickets go, and where did they come from?
Oh.
But then the idea is that like most animals can like bed down and get down. Okay, what was I'm interested in your fact check.
Yeah, so it can cause respiratory irritation, and it can be difficult to breathe around eucalyptus smoke. It's not inherently like toxic, but it's a safety hazard, which is why they tell you not to burn eucalyptus in your fireplace or in a campfire generally. But it also, it burns very hot, and the gas apparently can be combustible.
Interesting.
So all of that to say, doing this study in a eucalyptus forest could be its own specific thing.
Exactly.
But so let's get back to it. So what is the kind of expectation? I don't know if there's a regulation, but what is the expectation after prescribed burn? Are you supposed to monitor specifically looking for the impacts to wildlife, or is that just something that you do?
I mean, it depends on who you are, who you work for, what your goals and objectives are. And then I think like obviously the scientists, and like generally when I'm on prescribed fire, I'm like a resource advisor as the biologist, where like fire people could care less, right? Like a lot of the fire guys are just like, let's burn it and our lives. But we're interested. We obviously don't want to kill stuff. And so I actually have an interesting story from we did some burns like last month, and we were in oak woodland. We try to keep the fire away from old oak trees. Like sometimes a tree's gonna catch flames and it'll burn, but we're trying to keep oak trees. We don't want to like burn down the oak forest. And it's pretty amazing, like when the fire goes past an oak tree, how much heat an oak tree can take, and then it just carries on, and like the oak tree's just like doing its oak tree thing. I always wonder if like it feels good. Like for some reason,
like scratching an itch or
yes.
something. Yeah.
Well, I always wondered, like, do trees actually itch, but they can't ever itch themselves? So like the smoke comes and it gets like, all the stuff.
Maybe it's like an exfoliating like facial or something. Like, oh yeah.
So there's an old oak tree, holes, it's like a elderly oak tree, for lack of a better term. And so the flame front goes through. But then some of the cat eyes and the hollows on the oak tree end up catching fire. So this oak tree is actively on fire. But then the flame, the prescribed fire is over, but the trees will sit there and burn. That's why we try not to, have them catch on fire. So then I go up with another resource advisor, and we're like, oh yeah, that tree's burning. And I'm like, well, I'm gonna, let the guys know, the people, the firefighters, not always guys. I'm gonna let the people know that we got to put some water on this. And on a lot of prescribed fire, there's also water resources. So we had the Helitack guys there that have a helicopter that can drop water, 400 gallons.
Wow.
In one shot. And so me and my colleague are like just on the road up from this tree, just like watching it, thinking like, oh, we should let someone know. And then we see Helitack come. And so Helitack comes and they drop their first load of water on it, and we're like, oh my god, we're so excited because it never gets old. Such a super cool thing to see. And so we're like, oh my god, and we didn't have enough time to get our phones out and like record it, but it's probably better that way. And so we're like, wow, that was amazing. It was like right there, and then you see really the weight of the water hit the tree. And then I'm like, man, but the tree's still on fire, and it's smoking a little bit more. And then we see there's a spotter in the chopper, right? And so it's because you can't see the other guy, but then we like look up and the spotter's like, we're like, yeah. And then we hear it again and we're like, they're going to do another drop. So they come, they do a second drop. They hit the tree like pretty much dead on this time. And you see the limbs kind of rebound from the weight of all the water. And so after a fire front and 2 water drops, then a barn owl comes out of the tree.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So
He's
that
like,
owl,
this is ridiculous.
well, it's like that tree was on fire and that owl was like fine,
Yeah.
So I don't know like how he was that owl was nested in the tree and where the smoke was, because maybe it was on the tips, but I was pretty impressed with the amount of tolerance that owl had. If there hadn't had been that second water drop, maybe it would have stayed in there and been fine. Maybe eventually, night would have come and it would have left. But to me, that just kind of shows the resilience of how these animals have adapted to fire, and they'll find their way.
Nice.
Yeah. So we don't want to kill stuff. I've never seen anything significantly dead in the prescribed fires that I've been on. Someone else told me a great story that they were at on a large fire event, and the coolest thing they ever saw was the bears. So then the bears come after the fire, and the tree has all this like larva, and the trees, and so the bears just like sitting there like eating all the larvae and like all the grubs that were in this decaying tree that now were available to the bear that the tree had burned. So I think most animals know, but so relating it back to the study, like, compared to what I know, but maybe like eucalyptus fires, but how are you you can't get every lizard out of the forest if you want to,
No, I guess the idea is to be able to do a proper cost benefit analysis on a prescribed burn, knowing that there is a fatality rate.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because then it's not even to say like we're not going to do prescribed burns, but maybe like you can pick a specific time of year. If there's a lizard mating season, you don't pick that time of year. Or like, are they hibernating? Are they not hibernating? Like, I think that's more about this is just seeking to get good data so that you can try to do your prescribed burns in the best way possible. Because like, no matter what, we're never going to get back to where we were, where fires just happen and stop, because we've stopped doing them. So now there's all this excess fuel. There's different animals. So like the amount of the specific types of plants and specific phases is different. Like you're never going to get back. Right.
Yeah.
So in an attempt to best manage the space, I guess they want to have the best data, and they realized that you can't do a survey of a burn 12 days later, which again I would say duh.
Animals are going to scavenge those dead things. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but now if you're going to say like you're going to do prescribed burn in this space with an endangered lizard, now maybe you can tack on some regulation and say that like, okay, you have to walk the burn maximum 2 days later or something like that.
Yeah, and a huge thing not a huge thing, but a big thing is like breeding birds. And so definitely when we're doing prescribed fire, if there's a known raptor nest, like it could potentially prevent a burn, specifically eagles. But so on some, when we're making some decisions about when and where and how to burn, we've shied away from spring burns because of the amount of birds that could be nesting in units and what that would do, to the nest, depending on if they're ground dwellers. Definitely you find a lot of turkey eggs out here in the grasslands. So
hard-boiled.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice egg salad sandwich.
So we do sometimes make decisions to not burn depending on the location and those things. But yeah, I think more for that particular study, more data
Mm-hmm.
if they don't want to kill lizards.
Yeah, no, for sure. And we don't, I would say. It's
Yeah.
fair to say. Nice. Well, thank you for talking about these studies with me. I'm sure we could do this quite often. There's lots of things that come up on the show, and I'm like, oh, I bet Dana would know about that. Are there any other developments or new studies in your field that you're excited about or interested in or have crossed your desk that you wanted to mention?
I had mentioned it a little bit earlier about pumas, but like
Yeah.
a huge thing that people are really starting to understand. And it gets framed as pumas because they're the charismatic macrofauna that people enjoy, like learning about. But a huge thing that's happening here in this part of the Bay Area is just wildlife connectivity. So now, as biologists and agencies and fish and wildlife, they're really starting to understand how animals adapt and move in urban environments, and are getting so then you look at conservation biology and genetics, and so that's what's happening with the pumas in the Santa Cruz Mountains. Is if they don't start having flow of they're technically genetically extinct. So if there's not an increase in genetic flow of other pumas into the Santa Cruz Mountains in the next 50 to 100 years, pumas could be extinct. So imagine how many deers there's going to be then.
Right. Well, and I feel like mountain lions are so like complicated because all it takes is one news story of somebody's dog getting taken by a mountain lion and it just kind of tanks the whole conversation for a while.
Yeah.
And I feel like that happens cyclically too.
Mm-hmm.
Or you like really start to build up ground where you get people on your side. You get them thinking, man, mountain lions are so cool. And you tell them not to run early in the morning by themselves in certain areas. And they're like, yeah, of course, I got it. Mountain lions got to have their space. And then something happens and everyone's like, boo, mountain lions.
Yeah. Exactly. So there's actually a lot of work and like a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? Just a lot of stuff working on like what can we conserve? How are they crossing highways and freeways? That the other population of mountain lions in the Santa Monica Mountains, and they get collared and they put in an overcrossing. Highway 17 here's getting an undercrossing
Right.
for pumas. So I think that's kind of the really cool stuff that I get to work on, that there's a lot of momentum of working on that, but specifically in this Coyote Valley, it's the last undeveloped place between South San Jose and Morgan Hill. And so there's actually a really big push for agencies to start purchasing properties, farmlands, and really understand how wildlife is crossing the valley. But, obviously it's puma, but it's bobcats. A huge thing is badgers.
Oh, yeah, the badgers.
Yeah, the badgers. And, everyone lost their minds when, do you remember the video of the badger and like the fox or the coyote crossing under a culvert together?
Uh-huh. I have since learned from my child's nature books that badgers and foxes share warrens quite often.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow. So maybe they were warren mates.
Could be.
And they were like, let's go cross the culvert. So lots of stuff. And just thinking, and my favorite thing to talk about that too is because the individual person, you can really think about like your neighborhood and your backyard. And that's what I used to do when I was a little girl. Like I wanted birds in my yard, so I would build all these attractants. But what kind of fences are people putting in? What does your local park have? Do you have pollinator species in your yard? Because invertebrates, insects, birds also need these things. And so I just kind of like the idea of this wildlife connectivity because it connects us to it at our basic home level, our yard level, and then, freeways, and then genetically. And it just is a great thing that so much attention is being put on that. And, the foresight of biologists and leaders, scientific leaders in our community that are really pushing for this before there's just so many houses that there's nothing we can do.
God, Oh man, that feels very real. Living in the Bay Area and larger California kind of area, there's just things are popping up everywhere. And so my dad's from Southern California, and we would go down and visit where he used to live and stuff. And he'd be like, that used to be an orange grove, and that used to be a strawberry farm, and I was like, yeah, Dad. And now I feel like that, like driving around going, that used to be a vacant lot, and that used to be a redwood grove, and that used to be, yeah, it's truly wild. Well, I think that's a perfect segue into my last question for you for this part of the show, which is, what do you want people to take away from our conversation here today? Is there anything that people can do to help native wildlife? Or is there any kind of like tidbit that you hope people remember from our conversation today?
Yeah, I mean, a few things. And I think what excited me most about the deer versus pig study is, just because things are framed a certain way and animals are framed as good or bad doesn't always mean that that's what's happening, right? And without like research, you don't really know. So, be open to all the possibilities that animals and how they're existing, and it's not always what it's what people are saying that it is. And then I brought up the connectivity thing because that's what I want people to take away. Like if you're listening to this and, some people live in apartments and they just have balconies, but you can put plants. But I highly encourage people to get involved with local parks, city parks. I know it sounds like, maybe I sound old now too, like your dad, but like being involved politically, because all of the stuff that agencies are doing for development, there is a public comment period, and people's input really does matter. So, figure out when planning meetings are in your community, when they're asking for comments, and really get your opinion out there, and, have concerns about wildlife and help make these decisions, because it does have an impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have an impact.
Yeah.
Your impact has an impact.
Yeah. It's exponential.
Yeah. And you could even just tell other people what you've learned and make sure that they also know how they can get involved if you're already involved. Bring somebody with you, right? Make the movement bigger, create a ripple. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for chatting with me about this stuff. I would absolutely love it if you would stay with me for Blair's Animal Corner. Are you down?
Of course, I'm down.
Yes. All right. Well, if you're just tuning in, you missed the best part. Rewind, please. You're listening to This Week in Science. I'm Blair. I'm here with our guest, Dana Page, who's a wildlife biologist. And I just wanted to thank everyone for listening and remind you that you can actually go to TWIS.org and go to our Patreon page, and you can support us at many different levels. Or most importantly, you can just tell somebody else about our show. Create a ripple of information, just like we were talking about a minute ago, but with science news. And with that, I do believe it is time for Blair's Animal Corner.
She loves our creatures, great and small. Biped, millipede, no pet at all. If you want to hear about animals, she's your girl. Except for giant pandas and squirrels. Blair's Animal Corner.
Okay, so I just have a couple quick stories tonight. So the first one is kind of a higher level conversation than I usually bring. I usually bring, like, for context, Dana, I like to bring like, oh, hey, there's this cool spider with this crazy silk, or like, oh, did you know that climate change is making it harder for sharks to smell? Very specific kind of studies. Those are both real. There was a spider that makes a catapult a few weeks ago. Can't handle it. It's so cool. Spiders are amazing. But this is a much higher level conversation that is actually very much related to the conversation we were just having about establishing gene pools, good gene pools to allow animals to maintain populations in an environment. And this is specifically related to climate change. This is a study out of University of Oklahoma and in partnership with the Oklahoma Museum of Natural History. And they looked at bank voles, which are widespread throughout Europe. Bank voles are found across broad geographic ranges and broad climate ranges. And they wanted to look at genomes of individual animals in specific populations and then compare those populations to each other based on their climates. And so from there, they were able to identify genetic variations associated with climate adaptation. And this is the really cool part, trace their origins. It took over 5 years to complete the collection and analysis of this genomic data to reconstruct the evolutionary history of the species. And every once in a while, I just like to remember that it took literally years to sequence the human genome. It took like 20 years or something? It was insane. And so this was like an amazing thing that happened. And now we're just like, hey, we sequenced, hundreds of voles. Here we are. So cool. That's like how technology and kind of developing data models and stuff, new test methods, all these sorts of collection methods, detection methods, all these things can kind of result in faster data, which brings us to better data sets that bring us to better hypotheses and also results. So what they found, like I could get very deep into the specifics, but essentially what they found was that the genomes of the climate-specific elements of the genome, like the sections of the genome that were specific to success in a particular climate, was all based in common ancestry. So when we talk about how animals can evolve and adapt to new conditions, most people think about mutation. But in reality, it's all based on historical genome, or not all, but a lot, right? And so the implication here is that the success of an animal based on variable climate, in this case, is based on historical genomic data. And so the genomic diversity is actually what allowed the bank vole to succeed in all these different climates. And I think what it made me think about is the fact that the whole deal with climate change is not that like animals can't adapt to new climates, and that it's all happening so fast. And whereas mutation might actually work to adapt to a new space over time, climate change is moving so fast, there's not enough time for that, right? like you can't expect a species to maintain based on random chance changes in a genome that results in success enough that it'll persist in the gene pool also. So like if all this stuff is just hanging out in the background in their genome already, then there's more chances for it to be expressed and succeed that is more than a random recombination error. So it's a great argument for exactly what Dana was talking about how you need genetic diversity. And I immediately was pulled back to, I used to teach this program when I ran the Zoomobile called Biodiversity Basics. And it was for middle schoolers. And we talked all about the 3 pillars of biodiversity. Talk about how it's like a stool, like a 3-legged stool. And you need all 3 legs or the stool will fall over. You have your genetic diversity, you have your species diversity, and you have your ecosystem diversity. And those together build a biodiverse ecosystem. And so like, I was immediately pulled back to this whole curriculum that I wrote about biodiversity. Anyway, but the genetic diversity is really the key here to success for these voles. And so it is a reminder that in order for animals to survive the perils of climate change, they have to be given a chance. And in this case, this is a very specific chance, which is maintaining a population large enough and enough genetic diversity to be able to adapt via historical genes.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's I always think about sea turtles as the example I use here, is that like sea turtles have this like triple whammy, right? So the plastic pollution, they eat plastic bags, they think it looks like jellyfish. Humans have poached them pretty extensively. And they have temperature dependent sex determination, which is causing their eggs to span a less even sex split when they are born from their nests. And so they have trouble reproducing. And so it is really the triple whammy that is causing the problems. Like a population could withstand one, maybe two of these stressors, but all three, and the sea turtles are really in trouble, right? And so I feel like this is related to that too, is that an animal might, a population, a species might be able to make it through climate change if they had their full complement of genetic diversity. But if we've already fragmented their habitat, there's not gene flow across a space, or they've been hunted or poached to a point where they're a teeny tiny species with, or population with not much genetic diversity, then they have trouble adapting into this new environment. So I don't think it's anything new in this study, but I think it's a really cool example of being able to trace those genes all the way back to their ancestry, and that there is all these variations specific to climate have been carried along generations from a common ancestor that was in one place. So it's pretty neat.
That's really neat. And you know what it makes me think of that just happened? Did you hear about the elephant seals?
What happened with the elephant seals now?
Well, I mean, that's just proving the point further. But right, elephant seals, northern elephant seals at one time were almost hunted to extinction.
Yeah.
For use for their blubber, but then they rebounded. But they are all they're all very genetically similar because they came from like a group of 8.
Yes, yeah, that's right. They're like the textbook example of a genetic bottleneck.
Yes, exactly. And this year, they closed down Año Nuevo and over on the San Mateo coast, where they do tours where there's a breeding rookery, because they were exposed. They had bird flu, or I don't know specifically what disease, but they all were getting. The researchers found out they were sick, and then they didn't want it spreading to humans, but. I'm sure just for epidemiology and disease, having similar genes is not good.
Oh, absolutely. I know. Yeah, that's been an issue with other marine mammals too. I can't remember which ones offhand, but there were other marine mammals that were having these strange diseases, and they thought that it was cutting through them extra hard because of the low genetic diversity. Absolutely. Wow. Yeah. So anyway, that was one of my stories. The other one was, Dana, do you like cheese?
I love cheese.
Yeah. Yeah, I do believe you particularly like goat cheese. Is that correct?
I do.
Yeah. Well, anyway, would you eat goat cheese made by a plant?
Yes. I've also eaten lizard. So
sure, yeah. So the bar is low, is what you're saying. Yeah. I guess what I'm saying is, since you love cheese so much, would you turn your nose up at cheese made by a plant if somebody told you it tastes just like real cheese, it has the same proteins in it, but it was made from a plant? You'd be like, no, I want my real cheese.
I would taste it first, and then I would let you know.
That's correct. Okay, so there's all sorts of different research going on these days to try to make protein sources other than from animals. Of course, there's a huge climate and environmental impact to raising beef and also dairy via cows. There's also just like the economic issue, the space issue. I always go on and on about trophic levels and how you could feed 10 times as many people on an acre of corn versus an acre of cows, right? So all of this good stuff. But so this latest study is from Hebrew University in Jerusalem, and they wanted to see if they could get a plant to make dairy proteins the same proteins that give milk its nutrition, texture, and cheese-making properties. So this is really truly like milk and cheese from a plant, not like this is cashew milk or something like that. No, this would be like real milk and cheese. And I could be wrong about this, but because the whole crux of it is making, what is it? It's beta casein, which is one of the major proteins found in cow's milk. I don't see anything in this study about lactose, so I'm thinking that us lactose intolerant babies might be in really good shape with this one, but we'll see. But the researchers wanted to use a plant that's kind of related to mustard. I forget, what's the name of it? Hold on, I lost the plant. This is the part that Dana is actually going to know something about, and I'm not. Hold on. It is Arabidopsis. Do you know what Arabidopsis is?
No,
Okay.
I don't know Arabidopsis.
Okay. So Arabidopsis is also known as cress. It's a small flowering plant in the cabbage and mustard family. It's known to be very good at growing in arid soil, hot climates. It's suitable for global warming. It's very good at growing in like a hothouse or in kind of more simple environments. So it would be a good kind of crop or laboratory plant to use for studies, but also then to potentially mass make dairy. So this is part of something called plant molecular farming. They use crops as miniature protein factories. And so they've tried to figure out how to make like beef basically this way too. The jury's still out on that one. But then, so they engineered the Arabidopsis seeds to produce bovine beta casein, and they expected that it would be found in the vacuoles. That's just the place that they'd be like, we're going to have it make this random thing. It's going to go in these storage containers in the plant cells. But instead, they formed in previously unrecognized protein-rich structures that look like natural casein protein micelles. So this is actually like similar to how it would have been made in a cow, closely associated with tiny oil bodies inside the seed cells. And that also means that it didn't mess with any of the other properties or functions of the plant cells. So it still maintained healthy seed germination, which means that the plant could potentially possess this dairy production while continuing its ability to be reseeded. So it just, all in all, this is still very early stages, but it does seem possible to make dairy out of plant cells, but also that they found this whole new protein storage body in a plant cell in this process. So this is a whole potential other avenue of research.
Wow. I would try all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't say anything about like, is anyone sampled the cheese?
No, I don't think it's anywhere that far. So they were able to make the best performing plants produced beta casein at levels of approximately 1.26% of the total soluble seed protein. So 1% of soluble seed protein was beta casein. So that's significantly higher than many previous reports of production in plants, but it's not enough to like make anything yet.
Yeah. Not yet, at least.
So these graduate students are going to get their dissertation completed. They're going to get their PhD. That's great. Hopefully somebody else can take this and do some more research, make it better, get me my plant cheese. I'm just curious how it's going to work. Like, how would you... We'll figure it out. But how do you get it out of there and then turn it into cheese? I don't know.
I see like smashing a roller, smashing, squeezing it.
I imagine it'd be like a centrifuge too, because you have the plant protein and then you have, so one is probably denser than the other, so you'd want to kind of like separate it out. I don't know. I can't wait to find out. I can't wait to go to my wine tasting with my plant cheese on the side. Great. Yeah, but I do I do think it's very funny all of the crazy kind of lengths we're going to try to maintain our lifestyle in an age of climate change. That's ultimately what this is about. And I think it's because it's clear we're not going to change our behavior too much.
We still want cheese no matter what.
Absolutely. We want our cheese, we want our beer, we want our meat. And I get it, man. I get it. But, you know, I also think that there's more sustainable pathways to some of this stuff, and we also don't always have to have it. I think that's the other piece, is like changing people's expectations. And I do think that like fake meat and even dairy alternatives are getting better just in general, and I think it's making it socially acceptable just to forego the real deal some of the time. Like, I know lots of people who eat meat who will order an Impossible Burger at a restaurant, and I think that that's like edging in the right direction.
Yeah.
What do you have, like a soapbox, an environmental soapbox that you try to get on, or do you have your own hill that you want to die on?
I mean, like for ag, but then you know, we live in California, like on the agriculture side, like I just really try to eat in season, you know. And
That's great, yeah.
My huge thing is like one of the worst fruits to eat is a pineapple.
Oh, sure.
Like how far it has to travel to get to where you are. So I'm a big fan of just like whatever's in season. It's citrus season in California. I'm eating citrus. My husband loves tomatoes, and it'll be December and he'll get tomatoes, and I'll be like, those are the most disgusting tomatoes I've ever seen. So that's kind of my soapbox. And like you said, I just think we've been conditioned to be like, well, I want so I will definitely do not ever try to give me strawberries out of strawberry season. I will be like, that is the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. Get your, like, wherever that strawberry came from, I don't want it.
Yeah.
So that's my soapbox of like, eat local, eat in season. You don't need cheese all the time. You don't need, you know, this all the time. But it's easy to say when you live in California and we have the climate we have. Or like, imagine if you live in Alaska or, you know, some of these places where their growing season's super small and then you have to ship things in.
Yeah, but I think you bring up a really good point, though, is like in places where you can, right? Having a food, like we have seasonal foods. People eat peppermint at Christmas time.
Yes.
and people eat, like, what else is there? I don't know, like they eat strawberries in the summer, they eat watermelons in the summer. They, you know, there's some of these things. Candy around Halloween, I don't know, candy corn. They're the processed things, like the commercialism. We've built in some seasonality to some of the things that we consume. I don't think it's that far of a leap to get there with some of our other foods. And especially when you learn how much better the stuff tastes when you do it that way.
Yeah.
I also, you know, not to sound like, I don't know, I've started going to the farmer's market every single Sunday, and it is because I have a toddler and he eats berries and fruit, and it is very, very, very expensive. And I have found two things about it. One, if I spend $200 at the grocery store on fruit and then he won't eat it because it's not sweet enough, that pisses me off. But if we go to the farmer's market, he eats it all before it can go bad. Two, it goes bad much slower than the food at the grocery store. It lasts all week. So I'm like, you know, this might be 20% more expensive, but I have used 100% of the food that I feed him. And I knew where it came from. And, you know, even the bread and the cheese that I get at the farmer's market, it came locally. I know exactly what's in it. And now I'm like starting to get to know my farmer's market farmers. And I get to see them and they recognize me and my son, and like it's the cutest. And it's building like a sense of community around food, which we get so separated from, right? And like you have chickens, right? Don't you?
Yes.
So
same crazy chicken lady.
Yeah, but that means that you provide yourself
Mhm.
with a food source on your own, but you have a greater connection to the food that you're eating. I think it's so awesome. And I
Yeah.
think that's a
Also,
really good goal.
yeah, that's the other thing. Like eggs, like store-bought eggs. I'm like, yeah, I won't eat store-bought eggs. But something that's interesting that you talked about food waste that is also kind of my pet peeve,
Oh, yeah.
is that one of the biggest contributors to like climate change is because people put food waste into dumps and into landfills instead
Mm-hmm.
of composting it. So if there's any takeaway too, for anyone listening, or something you could
Mm.
do that's super tiny, it's compost. Because if you put that into the garbage, it's going into these landfills and then it's off gassing. Where, like, if you're composting correctly, and then chickens are great companions to composting, right? They're like garbage disposals, and you can feed
Yes.
your chickens anything. But I just also like love it because I just see it as like this reciprocity relationship I have with my chickens, where like I take care of them, but then they in return
Uh-huh.
give me eggs, and we do eat the chickens every once in a while. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, so but that's the big thing is food waste, and that's my other thing is like I buy food, I want to eat it, all the packaging, like the way that food scientists have learned to package food to make it last longer. Like I listened to this thing about how they all the packaged salads,
Oh, sure.
all the science that goes behind like how much gas is moving, so that that lettuce and salad inside that thing can last for weeks. So yeah, but composting and just food waste in general, I think is horrible.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good actionable thing that anybody can do. I know like kids, I used to teach kids about climate change all the time and about other, environmental concerns, and kids really like to latch onto the compost thing, and I think and food waste. And it's because it's very tangible. It's something that they can have an impact on immediately. You don't have to be an adult with a pocketbook to have some backyard compost,
Yeah,
or to teach your own parents how to sort properly, but or to campaign for your school to get a compost bin. Honestly, like these are all things that I've seen students do, and I think that's why that is something that kids still have a lot of agency over too, is what they put into their body.
yeah. And some municipalities are on board. I was just in Sac, and my friend lives across the bridge in Sac, so they're in Yolo County, and you will get fined in Yolo County if you do not separate your compost and your recycling and your garbage.
Oh my.
Like it's a $50 fine the first time, and then it goes up exponentially from there if they find you continuing to violate the separation rules.
Okay. See, I need that here because we finally got compost in my apartment complex, but there are several people that live here that obviously don't understand how it works. So every time I go to try to empty my compost, there is so much plastic in it. And I'm like, well, this is going back to the dump, obviously.
Yeah, and I don't know if I trust the like separated offsite.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely don't.
Yeah, and then something else too that I heard is like compostable plastics. Like there's no such thing as a compostable plastic,
Yeah.
right? You
Yeah, it
don't.
takes so long.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, gosh, I think that at the end of the day, hopefully we left people with some things that they can think about, some
Some
actions that they can take to protect their local and elsewhere wildlife, plants, the climate in general, our beautiful planet full of amazing biodiversity.
amazing.
Yeah. Thank you for listening, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you so much, Dana Page, for being here and sticking it out with me to the end. What a fun conversation.
Yeah,
Oh
thanks
my
for having
goodness.
me, and I'm excited to see come back maybe one day to talk about more exciting stuff, and
Yes.
I'll definitely want to listen to your future episodes.
Yeah, absolutely. I will try to send you things besides pigs. But I will send you some other articles when I come across them. I think you might find them interesting.
Wow.
So here comes our little outro here. Shout outs to Fada for his help with social media, show notes, Gord for manning the chat room, Identity4 for recording the show. Hopefully your internet held up. It looks like it did. Okay. Rachel, thank you for amazing assistance. Hopefully not too much editing required this week, but we really appreciate you. And thank you to our Patreon sponsors for their generous support. This is where Kiki would usually read off our patron list.
Thank you to Aaron Anathema, Adam Mishkan, Alan Viola, Ali Coffin, Andrew Swanson, Artem, Arthur Kepler, Bob Calder, Bob Coles, Brendan Minish, Brian Carrington, Chris Wozniak, Christopher Dreyer, Christopher Rappin, Craig Landon, Craig Potts, Daryl Myshak, Dave Wilkinson, David E. Youngblood, Derek Schmidt, Don Mundis, E.O., Eda Mandela, Eric Knapp, Flying Out, Fredis 104, G. Bird Lattimore, Greg Briggs, Jack, Jason Olds, John Atwood, John McKee, John Ratnaswamy, Johnny Gridley, Ken Hayes, Kent Northcote, Kevin Parachan, Kevin Reardon, Kurt Larson, Lon Makes, Lauren Gifford, Mary Gertz, Marjorie, Mark Hasselflow, Mark Jenkins, Noodles, Patrick Peccaro, Paul D. Disney, Paul Ronovich, Philip Shane, Pierre Velazar, Richard Badge, Robert Norland, Robert Farley, Rodney Lewis, Rudy Garcia, Remy Day, Sean Clarence Lamb, Shu Bruce, Stephanie Embry, Stephen Albaran, Steve Leisman, aka Zima Sue Doster, Teresa Smith, Tony Steele, and Vegard Schefstad.
Thank you for all your support on Patreon. If you're interested in supporting us, you can find more information at patreon.com/thisweekinscience. On next week's show, we'll be back at 8 p.m. Pacific time, broadcasting live from Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook channels. If you want to listen to us as a podcast, just search for This Week in Science where podcasts are found. If you enjoyed the show, you can get your friends to subscribe as well. For more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes and links to stories will be available on our website. That's www.twis.org. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, or a suggestion for an interview, please let us know on one of our social media accounts or send us an email. Just be sure to put TWIS in the subject line, or your email will be spam filtered into a plant that makes cheese. We love talking science news with you every single week. We look forward to discussing it with you again next week. And if you've learned anything from the show, remember, it's all in your head.
This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. 'Cause this week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth, and I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in 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 Science.